What if the greatest secrets of the British Empire were locked away in government files or military archives, but were hidden in the trembling handwriting of men who were never meant to be remembered? For centuries, history was written by generals and politicians. Their records tell us about grand strategies and glorious victories. But the true story, the story of fear, doubt, and quiet awakening, was concealed in notebooks carried through mud, rain, and unending silence. As Britain's armies marched across the globe, from the trenches of France to the deserts of Sudan and the jungles of Burma, thousands of ordinary soldiers kept diaries. These were private thoughts they could never show their superiors. In ink often stained with sweat and dust, they wrote not of glory, but of profound confusion. Not of victory, but of gnawing doubt. Imagine a young private in the trenches of 1917, writing by faint candlelight. Every order we follow feels heavier than our rifles. Another scribbled, "If I live through this, I shall never again believe what they tell us." These weren't grand acts of rebellion. They were small, personal acts of defiance against a vast, impersonal machine. The empire demanded absolute obedience, but the human heart demanded truth. And so, in these lost pages, we find the hidden conscience of Britain, as wars of voices of ordinary men who were sent to conquer the world, but instead began to truly see it for the first time. Many of these diaries, of course, never made it home. Censors confiscated them. Worried families burned them. Some were simply lost, buried in forgotten battlefields alongside their authors. Yet, a few survived, and when historians finally unearthed them, they discovered something astonishing. The British soldier's famous silence wasn't a sign of ignorance or indifference. It was a form of resistance. In India, a corporal described his deep shame watching a famine unfold right next to fully stocked military stores. In South Africa, a sergeant wrote about the women and children dying in concentration camps, a reality the empire refused to acknowledge back home. In Egypt, another soldier confessed in his journal that he no longer knew who the real enemy was. Reading between the lines, you could almost feel the tremor of an awakening. It's the precise moment when these servants of empire realized they were also its prisoners. These weren't revolutionaries or political activists. They were farm boys, clerks, bakersmen who had been told they were bringing civilization to the world, only to find themselves complicit in something far colder. One haunting entry simply reads, "I dream of home, but home feels like a lie now." Such words were never meant for the history books. During the First World War, the British Army officially banned soldiers from keeping diaries at the front. The official reason was that they were a security risk if captured by the enemy. But the real fear wasn't the Germans. It was the truth. These diaries described shocking incompetence, needless deaths, and orders that made no tactical sense. Some soldiers wrote about comrades being executed by their own officers for refusing to participate in suicidal charges over the top. Others questioned why colonial troops from across the empire were treated as expendable shadows in a European war. These pages bled with questions that the empire could not and would not answer. In the trenches, men learned a harsh lesson. Propaganda and patriotism vanished. The instant the shells began to fall, one soldier at the Somme wrote, "They called this glory. It smells of blood and lies." His notebook was discovered decades later, sealed inside a rusty tin can. Its last line, smeared by rain, reads, "If this is civilization, then God help us." After 1945, as Britain fought its final, desperate battles to hold on to a crumbling empire, the diaries returned. This time, the stories came from the jungles of Burma, the highlands of Kenya, and the streets of Palestine. They told of burning villages, brutal interrogation cells, and men torn between their duty and their conscience. "We were told to win hearts and minds," wrote one young lieutenant, "but I think we broke them instead." In a detention camp near Nairobi, a medic described treating captured rebels and his fellow British soldiers with the same care, whispering to his journal, "Pain makes no difference between king and captive." These were not the words of traitors. They were the words of witnesses. Yet, when the wars ended, the empire quietly buried their testimonies along with its flags. The official archives often labeled these diaries as personal correspondences of no historical value. But for anyone who reads them today, they are the very soul of history itself. Among the most haunting diaries ever discovered was that of a captain serving in Burma. His final entry read, "I keep hearing the jungle breathing. It knows more than we do." Days later, he vanished during a chaotic retreat. His notebook was found years later, miraculously preserved by the humidity, its margins filled with strange, haunting sketches of trees and ghosts. Another diary, written by a young military engineer in 1943, contained only one entry, repeated dozens of times, page after page. Forgive us. These weren't soldiers motivated by hatred. They were men trapped in a moral vice, caught between the demands of obedience and the call of their own humanity. The more they wrote, the more they began to understand what empire truly was. Not just the control of land, but the control of memory itself. Every word they risked putting on paper became a quiet act of defiance against the command to forget. When historians began to piece these fragmented diaries together, they realized they were looking at a secret literature of the British Empire, hidden map of conscience that stretched across continents and centuries. It told a different kind of story, one of heroism not found in conquest, but in confession. The men who wrote these diaries never sought recognition. They simply wanted, in the loneliness of their posts, to be understood. Their stories reveal a powerful truth, that even within the grinding machinery of domination, the spark of empathy could survive. Some write about the unexpected kindness of villagers who shared their last morsels of food, the laughter of children who offered them water, the strange comfort they found in the eyes of people who should have been their enemies. In a world shattered by conflict, these diaries became tiny bridges, connecting one human being to another. And perhaps that is their truest victory, not won on the battlefield, but in the quiet act of remembering our shared humanity when the world demanded we forget it. Today, many of these diaries rest in the quiet halls of archives and museums. Their pages are brittle. Their ink is fading. Visitors walk past the sterile glass cases, seeing the spidery handwriting without hearing the voices behind them. But if you listen closely, you can still sense them, the scratch of a pen against cheap paper, the quiet breath between sentences, the beating heart behind every single line. These diaries are a powerful reminder that history is not only made by those who give the orders, but by those who must endure the consequences. And perhaps that is why the Empire feared them so much, because they proved, again and again, that truth can never be fully conquered. So, I'll leave you with this question. If the dead could speak to us through their diaries today, what truths would they tell us about the empires we still choose to believe in? Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more hidden histories. We'll see you next time.